Hello, this is Lord's Legion, and welcome to the best villains ever. The show in which I talk about a specific villain and talk about their backstories, abilities, greatest feats, and why I love them so much. Now this is going to be a Deadpool 2 special, and so it would make sense for me to focus on an episode featuring one of Deadpool's greatest enemies, even though he's a bit of a C-list villain. But nevertheless, I do think that this villain is pretty underrated, but at the same time awesome. And the villain in question is of course Taskmaster. So without further ado, let's begin with his backstory, or their lack of. Because when it comes down to Taskmaster's origin story, we really don't know too much. Mainly because the comics never really explored his origin so much, and also the fact that it was retconned. But the most we really know about Taskmaster's origin story is the fact that Tony Masters was once a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, who tried to better himself by taking a Nazi version of the Super Soldier Serum. But unlike the original Super Soldier Serum, this one gives Tony the ability of photographic reflexes. However, there is a huge disadvantage with his photographic reflexes, in that the more Tony remembers a certain fighting skill, he will ultimately forget about a certain part of his past, to the point where Tony doesn't remember his past with S.H.I.E.L.D., his wife, or even so much his identity. And because of this, Tony decided to don the identity of Taskmaster and pretty much became a supervillain, as well as a mercenary and even a double agent. But little does Tony know that it was in fact his wife Mercedes who sort of thought off this elaborate plan for Tony's transformation as Taskmaster. And in reality it's Taskmaster who is the double agent for S.H.I.E.L.D. despite the fact that he doesn't even know as such. But looking back on Taskmaster's origin story, it is clearly scarce and we really don't know too much about his upbringing despite him being an ex-S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. And you can't help but feel bad for Tony because he is slowly but surely losing his humanity. And even though it is a bit shady for his wife to somewhat manipulate Taskmaster, at the same time this is the only way for both him and her to be somewhat together, given how Taskmaster is ultimately going to keep forgetting about her each time. And it really is sad. Now it's no secret that Taskmaster does have a lot of powers, abilities and weapons at his disposal. For starters, as previously mentioned, Taskmaster does have the ability of photographic reflexes, granting him the ability of perfectly mimicking a certain fighting style or skill. As well as the fact that Taskmaster does have some form of superhuman speed, and even superhuman reflexes, and could even predict a certain person's next move, almost to the point of precognition. In terms of his own skill, Taskmaster also has peak physical condition as well as a very skilled hand-to-hand combatant, not to mention that Taskmaster is also a master tactician, a master marksman, and even a weapons master. And on top of all of that, Taskmaster at minimum has at least 41 different fighting styles, from all of the opponents that he faced over the years, ranging from Spider-Man, Wolverine, Captain America, Black Panther, Iron Fist, just to name a few. And when it comes down to Taskmaster's weaponry, he's mostly comfortable with his sword and shield, though he also possesses board swords, bow and arrows, pistols, katanas, energy claws. In other words, Taskmaster is skilled with pretty much any weaponry, even with something like a pen. Now despite how many people deem Taskmaster as a C-list villain, he has achieved a lot of incredible feats over the years. And even though his photographic reflexes does give him that slight advantage, Taskmaster can be deemed as one of, if not the most skilled hand-to-hand combatant in the Marvel universe, or at the very least in terms of Earth-based characters. For starters, Taskmaster is so good with his shield that it could even cut through Spider-Man's weapon. Plus he can even go toe-to-toe with Iron Man while he was still in full armor. And even then, Taskmaster still beat him with only his judo skills. He can also hit two guys at the same time, only to catch both of the guns while they were still in mid-air. And speaking of Taskmaster's superhuman speed, he is also capable of catching a bullet. Plus, Taskmaster is so good at multitasking that he can fight Captain America as well as blocking some bullets coming from Bucky himself, as well as being one of the rare humans who can even catch Captain America's shield, and has once even demonstrated in jumping over a bullet, one that was heading straight towards him no less. Plus, Taskmaster's accuracy is so good that he could easily take down 4 giants with only one shield toss. He also performed several ricochets and a headshot with his own club, easily overwhelming Spider-Man's spider sense. He can also take a guy down with only 2 pens, which is something that I've mentioned earlier. Not to mention that he is so good with his own guns that he could even perform a triple headshot. Plus Taskmaster is surprisingly durable in fact that he can even take lightning, as well as recovering fairly fine after getting punched straight into a moving car. Plus he could also tank a hit from Spider-Man and can just jump right up easily. And even despite taking a bullet, Taskmaster can still go guns blazing, jumping around despite all of the bleeding. Plus Taskmaster can easily take down 2 street level superheroes with very little effort and even by himself, and can also imitate many styles at once. Plus Taskmaster does know pressure points and can easily exploit them during battle, as well as having lots of fighting styles memorized through the top of his head. He can also hold his own against both Captain America and Iron Man at the same time, as well as easily taking on soldiers left, right and centre, killing them all in the process. Plus Taskmaster was also capable of taking beatings from Asgardians during Siege, and surprisingly enough he even killed several of them as well. Plus Taskmaster is so resourceful that he can even take down Venom, as well as holding his own against a series of Avengers, which in itself is quite impressive. He can copy Daredevil and fight Elektra with his own eyes closed. And on top of all of that, Taskmaster can easily sneak up on Deadpool, overpowering one of the most unpredictable characters in the Marvel Universe. Now despite how Taskmaster isn't exactly a well-known villain, that doesn't mean he hasn't appeared in other mediums over the years, because in reality Taskmaster has appeared in other cartoons and video games. For starters, Taskmaster rather recently appeared in the Ultimate Comics, which, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do think that the more he takes a certain attack, the more resistant he becomes with that said attack, which is something that is pretty cool, which is a nice little spin on Taskmaster's powers. Plus he also appeared as somewhat of a regular villain in the Ultimate Spider-Man animated series. And even though I don't particularly like the series as a whole, Taskmaster is one of the rare characters in the show that I actually really liked, at least in terms of his first appearance. But sadly, as the cartoon went on, Taskmaster became more of just a generic villain, and he never came close to how threatening he was in his first appearance, which is quite unfortunate really. Plus Taskmaster also appeared in the Avengers Assemble cartoon, which is something that I haven't really been keeping up with, and I do know that this is in the same continuity as Ultimate Spider-Man. I haven't seen any of the episodes where Taskmaster is featured, but this was just something that I found during the research on this villain, so yeah. And he also appeared as one of the main villains in that Iron Man Captain America animated movie known as Heroes United, and given how terrible this movie looked, I never bothered to give it a full watch. And given some of the clips that I've seen featuring Taskmaster, I wasn't really feeling it in the slightest. However, Taskmaster's most prominent appearance in other mediums is probably the time where he was a playable character in Marvel vs. Capcom 3. And as cool as it was to see him, I couldn't help but feel that he was somewhat overshadowed by other characters that were introduced, such as Dormammu and Deadpool. Though at the very least it was fun playing as Taskmaster. Now although Taskmaster is never really used in prominent storylines, or at the very least he's hardly ever a huge player in them stories, I do think that it's somewhat unfortunate on Taskmaster because he really is a fascinating villain given his tragic backstory as well as his skill set. And when you really think about it, Taskmaster does have a lot of similarities with Deathstroke, in that they're both crazy mercenary supervillains who are both losing their humanities. But given how Deathstroke has been given a lot more recognition within the past 5 years, I do think that Taskmaster does deserve a bit more spotlight, because there's a lot more to this character than people give him credit for. So because of his scarce yet tragic origin story, as well as his very skilled moveset, not to mention the amount of stuff that he is capable of, and just the fact that Taskmaster is an all-around badass, this is why I personally believe that Taskmaster is one of the best villains of all time. So are you a fan of Taskmaster, and what are some of your favourite storylines featuring him as a villain? Comment below and share some thoughts. And as always, thank you guys for watching this video. Please like and subscribe. Take care and have a good one.